Before we start this video, a large thank you to Carter, Lewis, Steph, Joshua, Dark Crusader, a name I unfortunately cannot pronounce. Thank you for the support, my friend, and Antonio for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And an immense thank you to Halo Burner and Earn for their continued support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, my friends, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we are going to make it so we can make our character strafe or circle its target, the AI character that is. It's been asked a few times now, so we're going to go over a very simplistic way to do that. But also, I'm going to quickly make a prefab here for a new enemy because I'm going to cover blocking and dodging as well. And the blocking, the dodging, and the pivoting, or circling rather, does not really fit the undead enemy type. So I'm not going to spend very long at this stall. I'm going to skip over most of it actually. I'm going to make an AI Knight Combat Manager. Going to drop my namespace, delete, start, and update as is per tradition, and I make this derived from AI Character Combat Manager. But this is going to be basically like the same thing we did with the Undead Combat Manager. It's going to store its damage colliders, and it's going to set things up via animation events for the character. So again, I'm not going to go through this in depth because we've done this before. So for the sake of video, I will very much so streamline it. I'm going to copy the Undead prefab and change things to make it into a knight. For now, I'll just give him a straight sword. I'll give him a shield when we cover blocking. We'll set that up properly. But I'm going to delete the weapon manager on the straight sword, and I'm going to delete the damage collider and replace it with our undead damage collider, which I'm going to rename to manual damage collider. Why manual? Because it's going to be set up manually, because we're going to drag in the character causing the damage, and you can use this damage collision system across most of your enemies. You might need a special damage collider for certain things. I do that in Nephilim. I have like a few. Like I have an undead damage collider in Nephilim because they have a few attacks that are a bit more weird and different that other characters wouldn't normally have. But generally speaking, most of my enemy colliders, at least one of them on each enemy, does have a manual damage collider. So from now on, we'll rename it to that so we can use it on both our AI and our knight. Just be warned too, if you rename the script, it's probably going to break on your undead prefab, so just keep that in mind if you're changing name variables. Okay, we got the character causing damage, going to drag in the knight, and I'm just going to drag in here for the damage collider and the sword, and we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to yoink everything from the AI Undead Combat Manager, paste it in the Knight Combat Manager, and change things where I need to. So for example, right hand damage collider is going to become the sword damage collider. We don't have a left hand damage collider for now. We could add a shield later, but for now we got nothing, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to just keep set attack 01 and 02 damage. I'm not going to set up the animation events in this video. You guys know how to do that. But I will just show you that I have the functionality here for when I want to do it. So again, this is all stuff we've done before. There's nothing new here. Open right hand damage collider was going to be changed to open sword damage collider, and then close all damage colliders. Closes all damage colliders, which is just the sword right now. Now we can move the base damage and poise damage under the AI Character Combat Manager because every enemy in your game will use base damage and base poise damage. At least I think so. So I am going to move that here, and what I'm going to do is we can keep the damage modifiers then on their own classes. Because for example, a knight might have like 4 damage colliders, and a zombie might only have a couple, damage modifiers. So we can keep those modifiers over on each specific class, but the base damage and base poise can be dragged to the class it inherits from because both will use these. Just make sure you change the variable type to protected and not private so we can actually use them without it complaining that this is inaccessible due to the protection level. So I'm going to save that as a new prefab then. And I am going to duplicate the humanoid animator controller and rename it to Knight. And I'm going to delete all the two-handed stuff because I'm not allowing this AI character to switch between one-handed and two-handed. If you want to keep it there and do that, cool, all the power to you. It's pretty straightforward to set up with how we have things working right now. I'm going to make the default idle animation straight sword main idle because I am going to make this guy use a straight sword. And if you know by now that I'm using the straight sword pack of this run in the series, it's just on our asset store. If you want to support the channel with the series, go check it out. If you have your own animations, just use whatever you want to use here yourself, and I'm going to drag in the animator controller. Okay, cool. Now, let's go over to our default prefab network list, make sure it's there because it is network prefab. If you want it to appear on the network, you need to make sure it is there. Now we can go to the combat stand state and start writing our logic. So what do we want to do? Well, let's make a header. And keep in mind, if you have different combat stand states, you can put this on your base state if you want, or you can put it on any state that you want this character to have this as an option. But we're going to set it up so it's optional. So let's make a header called circling or strafing or whatever you want to call it, routing, flanking, whatever you feel like calling it. Call it whatever makes the most sense to you. I'm going to call it circling and make a bool for well circle target. Defaultly is false so we don't break our zombie functionality. And then we're going to make a protected virtual void. And we're going to say set circle path. and then we're going to have an AI character manager variable we're going to call AI character. And we're going to do a few things here. Let's comment this out together so we know what's happening. But this is going to be very straightforward. Pretty much all the logic is going to take place here. We need to make a couple additions to our AI characters though, but I'll get to that in a second. So private bool, have we chosen a path? Defaultly, false, obviously. Then we go to reset state flags. We can say has chosen path is equal to false when we leave, or we can come back and choose a new path. So what do we mean by choosing a path? Well, are we going to strafe left or are we going to strafe right? And we need to know if we're strafing, have we hit something? Because if so, we can't keep strafing into it because that would look weird. We figure this out by doing if physics.checkSphere. We pass the AI character combat manager lock on transform position, and we pass the radius of our character controller plus a buffer amount. Why? Because basically, if we get within the radius that's slightly bigger of our character controller to any of the geo in our world, so we can do that by using our enviro layers, then we know we're about to walk into a wall because the radius is slightly bigger than what our character controller is. And we're starting this projection at a lock-on transform, which is generally in the center of your character. You can start it somewhere else if you'd like. But we know that if this triggers, yes, we are indeed getting close to an obstacle or a piece in the environment, so we need to stop strafing. You can also optionally check for character layers too, so enemies don't strafe into one another. It's up to you though. But then we're going to say stop strafing and circling because we're about to hit something, or we've hit something, or we're about to hit something. So what we want to do then is instead path towards the enemy we're actually trying to fight. So stop strafing and walk at them, because then the nav mesh agent will take over and guide us using the navigation to walk into our target. So this is going to be very, very simple to set up, because basically we're always copying the rotation value of our nav mesh agent because it's always trying to get to where it needs to go. So when you walk forward, it will find a path for you. But when you're strafing, you're not walking forward, you're moving left to right. So instead, you're going to circle whatever you're following. So basically, let's make a comment here. We're going to strafe there, and then down here, if we haven't chosen a path, we're going to decide if we're going to strafe left or right. So if you haven't chosen a path, yes, now we have chosen a path, set that to true. We can just do a simple index because the choices really for me is just left or right. If you want to make it a little more complicated or complex, you can. But I'm going to do a random.range 0 to 100. And I'm going to say if the left to right index is greater or equal to 50, then we're going to go left. Otherwise, we're going to go right. So about 50% of the time, you are going to go left. Depends on if that's going to include 100 or not in that random.range. And otherwise, you're going to go right. So let's go now onto the AI character locomotion manager, because we actually don't have a way to update our animator values. So you see in the player locomotion manager here, we're copying our animation values from our network manager, and then we're applying them to the animator so we know if our character is strafing. We actually don't have a strafing enemy yet in this project because we've just never made one. So let's go over to the AI locomotion manager, add the update, override it, and copy all of the logic for the player, but replace the player with AI character. Now, I'm going to override the awake also and call AI character.getComponent. And you can do this identically if you want to. I think I was showcasing several ways to do it in the player, which is why I store it as a local variable and then apply it to the animator here. You can see here I'm saying player character network manager vertical movement equals the local vertical movement variable of the script. But you can just set it straight from the animator. Like, you can skip that bit if you want. I'm pretty sure I was showcasing an alternative way to do it. Just kept that. But you can just say AI character.animator get float vertical. So if you are the owner, what you're doing is setting your network vertical movement and horizontal movement to whatever they are locally on your animator. If you are not the owner of this object, you want to copy those values to whatever they are from the network. So basically the network, or the owner of the object on the network, is deciding what these values are, and the representation of it in other people's games is just copying that. So if I move my character forward or right, it's going to take those values and assign it from my character object in your game by copying whatever's coming from my side of the network. So again, we can do the same thing here. We can say set float instead of get float. We do the same thing with vertical and horizontal, and whatever's below here we don't need because this is just player logic and we can eradicate that or delete it. And that's basically it. So the cool thing about this is now is you can actually set your AI character's pursuit speed or combat stance speed by updating these values on the states. So if you want some AI to sprint when they pursue you, you can set the vertical value to a higher number. If you want some to walk when they pursue you, you can set it to 0.5. We already have a function for updating animator parameters, but as you can see, this one's always going to snap between 0, 0.5, 1, minus 0.5, etc. If you want to make one that will allow for numbers that won't be snapped, I'll just do this just in case. We can make a public set animator movement parameters, and we can do the exact same thing, but we won't snap it. We'll just set it raw. There might be certain circumstances where you always want to snap it with some AI, and maybe with some AI you don't, so having the option here is fine. I actually do use both in Nephilim, but it is for a really weird niche thing. I mostly just set it as it is raw, but like I said, just in case you want both, we will make both. So this function will just pass the raw numbers and this one will always snap to 0, 0.51. All right, what do we want to do? Well, we're just going to say character.animator setting as we did above. We're going to say set float. We're going to say vertical, as in the vertical value, the hash of the animator, because that's a local variable. Whoops, that is a local variable, so let's change the variables that we pass from vertical to vertical movement and horizontal to horizontal movement so we don't get confused. So set float vertical to vertical movement over a time of 0.1 f times time.delta time, so it's smooth. Do the same thing with horizontal now, just like so, and we're pretty much good to go. Now we can call this function wherever we want to actually override our animator values, or set them, sorry, not override them. So where we can do that? Well, when we strafe, we know we got to set our horizontal values. So if we're strafing left, we want to assign an amount to strafe and process it on the horizontal axis. So let's make a variable for float, and we'll call this strafe movement amount, or strafe move amount. Defaultly, of course, we're going to put it to 0. And when we leave, it might be a good idea to reset it to 0. So we could just say reset state flag, strafe movement amount is equal to 0. Okay, so if it's left, well, I'm only going to walk in my case. If you want to run strafe, you would set it to -1, but I'm going to set mine to -0.5. If you wanted to do either, you can make a system to pick which one. And if we're going right, it's going to be 0.5. Why? Because in the blend tree, 0.5 on the horizontal axis is walking right, and -0.5 is walking left. So strafe left to right, and then we're going to say we've chosen our direction here, and we want to process that strafe by saying set animator movement parameters. You can see horizontals first, so pass the strafe amount, and then 0 on the vertical because we're not strafing forward again, unless you want to. If you want to be able to, if you want the character to walk towards them as they're circling, you can do that too. You can make a more intricate system to choose if it wants to do this based on the AI's personality. Maybe some do it and some don't. Now for stop strafing, we reverse it. We put 0 on the horizontal, and then we apply the strafe amount to the vertical, so the character starts walking towards its target if it hits any piece of obstacle. But we also have to do a mathf.abs, because since this value can be negative, that will mean that sometimes they walk backwards, but abs will always make it into a positive value. So again, we get our strafe value, left or right, -0.5 or +0.5. If we hit something, we apply it to the vertical instead of the horizontal, and we make it an absolute value, so it's always positive, causing the AI to walk towards its target because it's copying the rotation and the direction of the nav mesh agent, so it's guiding it back to the target. Otherwise, we're just going to strafe from left to right. And I gotta say, this looks really great in game. I'll show you momentarily. Whoops, that's supposed to go under strafe, not under if we've chosen a path. That's my bad. So just apply this here, and I could have just copied and pasted this, but I'm already this far, so I might as well write it out again. AI character animator value set parameters. There we go. And I'm just going to delete this here and move this comment. So you can add some complexity to this if you want to, of course, but this is going to work really nice, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to save that real fast. I'm going to make a debug.log here. So we're just going to say we are colliding, or you could say we're close to colliding with something. So we're ending our strafe, and we're walking towards our target. Otherwise, debug.log here, we're going to say we are in fact strafing. So I'll just say strafing. That's fine. Let's save that. I'm going to go into the project again, save my scene. I should have did that because I got a prefab in there. I'm going to delete that after. Go to the world scene. Go to your AI, drop in your new AI, or if you're using the undead, just do that. Whatever AI you got, make sure they're spawning in here. I'm going to go to the prefab and disable pivoting because I don't have pivot animations on this animator right now. I don't deal with that currently. I'm also going to make a new set of states for them because I don't want to use the same states because the options will be a little bit different here. If you ever expand upon this, you don't want to share the same state with everybody. So I'm going to copy them all and change them tonight. I'm just going to fast forward here and drag them in. You don't need to watch me do all this, like renaming them and such. And through the magic of editing, here we are. And now I'm going to drag all these in. And then I'm going to set this to idle instead of sleep. And I'm going to clear out all the attacks and make my own, obviously. And don't forget to tick will circle target. Also, a friendly reminder, if you're watching this on anywhere but YouTube and you have paid for it, unfortunately, you have been scammed. So that is really lame. And I hope you come to YouTube and watch it where you don't have to pay for it. So let's go over to the project again. I'm just going to delete those prefabs and save my scene. I'm going to go into the world and untick is sleeping because I forgot to do that because I'm replacing this with my old zombie. I'm going to go to my knight and I'm going to go down and untick enable pivot. And then I am going to go over to my overrides and stop my attacks. I am going to temporarily though disable his ability to attack just to test this. So I'll do that off camera, but let's go over and go to the combat stance state here. And I am going to make sure I call circling by saying if circle target, if will circle target, call set circle path and pass the AI character. All right, now if I go into the scene here, you can see that if I get him to follow me, he does indeed circle me, and he gets close, and then he's going to start strafing, and when he's about to hit a pillar, he will actually come towards me instead. So that is working as intended. The problem is, though, he will actually never pursue me if he gets too far away. Why is that? Well, we're updating our horizontal movement value, and we're never actually readjusting it back to what it should be if we enter the pursue target state. So let's go ahead and fix that right now. If we go over to the project and go to the pursue target state, let's click that. And basically where it says here, if we're performing an action, when to return, well, yes, we want to return, but now we also want to set both of our movement parameters to 0 because we could have some movement applied on the horizontal axis, which we just don't want. And then also we should instead apply our movement on the vertical axis, so we will actually pursue and follow the target. Now, I'm just going to set mine to 1 by default, but if you want to make it so they walk sometimes and run sometimes, you can make that interchangeable using an enum or some kind of selector. But this guy, as you can see, there he is. He's following me now. He gets close. Whoops, I didn't disable that collider, so it just ticked me. And there he is strafing. And now he's going to come at me again and stop. And there he is. You can see he's kind of rotating slow. There's a very easy fix for this because we're following the rotation of the nav mesh agent. So what you want to do is go to the nav mesh agent and make sure the acceleration and the, I'm just going to take it here in a sec. Hang on, let's make sure this is working. Yes, he's following me again. And let's see, he runs at me again. This is all good. That rotation is really slow, so he looks he's kind of doing a little beeline and figure 8 motion. So let's just pause this real quick and go to the character nav mesh agent, angular speed 1000, acceleration 1000. Now check this out. Now he's going to pursue me, and he's going to take a nice sharp turn, stop at me, and there he is strafing again. He hits the post, and he's following me. So I'm just going to get him to walk all around here so you can see. He's strafing at me again. He hits that. He walks towards me. I back up and get out of range if I just keep going backwards. If I pass 5, you can see he sprints at me again. So there you go, guys. You have a way now for your character to kind of circle and flank you. Like I said, if you want to, you can also check for character layers. Just make sure you ignore the collisions on the character doing this cast. And that way, if he goes to strafe into, say, one of his buddies, if there's multiple strafing at you, you can just walk around and ignore this and then come towards the target like so. But this is a very simplistic way to do it, and it definitely works. When he comes into any kind of environment, he's just going to stop the strafe if he thinks he's going to hit it and walk towards you instead to readjust. Another cool thing to do too would be if he breaks line of sight, you can do that using a line cast. You could also just make him walk towards the target and stop strafing as well. A lot of cool things you can do with this, a lot of ways to expand upon it, but there you go. Now in the next video, unless someone else has a suggestion and wants to see something specific, I'm going to cover blocking and dodging with the AI. So basically you can give them an option to both block an attack and dodge or get out of the way of an attack. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you have a very lovely weekend. A special thank you, as always, to my patrons. It is because of each and every one of you the series can continue, so you have my sincerest gratitude. That's enough from me. I will see you guys next week.